Hey y'all, I'm Dan Hamilton, host of the Next Gen Warrior Show. As always, the Next Gen Warrior Show is brought to you by Chairman George P. Bush and the Texas Veterans Land Board. To our audience, thank you for being a part of our program. Thank you for supporting the success stories of veterans across our great country. If you are new to our audience, thank you for tuning in, whether that's following us here on social media or tuning in via audio, Spotify, or iTunes. On the program, we have a really great opportunity and responsibility to talk about the success stories of veterans. We continually discuss and have veterans on our show to talk about personal and professional development, but also hopefully to provide a bridge between veterans' experiences and our non-service peers so that we can share lessons learned about how to advance in our careers, how to deal with transition, how to be mentally and professionally healthy. And so I think our next guest, Amy Bernard, retired major from the United States Marine Corps, can provide some great insight into many of these different aspects. Amy, thank you for being on the show with us today. Before we get too far into it, can you provide our background, or can you provide your background to our audience on your military service, as well as your role at the Military Service Initiative at the Bush Institute?
Hi, Dan. Thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor to be here. I love the work that you do on your podcast. And again, to be part of Next Gen Warrior is a great opportunity. So thank you. Yes, as you said, I am retired from the United States Marine Corps. In fact, it was 1 year ago today, or this month, excuse me.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I can't believe how fast it has flown by. But spent my time as a logistics officer and 3 combat deployments to Iraq, 3 overseas duty stations, a few back and forth coast to coast moves in between all of those, and finished out my time as the executive officer at Combat Logistics Battalion 5 at Camp Pendleton, California. And I have to tell you, I miss San Diego a lot, but I decided to move back here to Dallas, Texas, and I know that that was the right choice. What I didn't plan for or never imagined is that I would have the opportunity to work for the same commander-in-chief that I came into the Marine Corps under. And what an amazing experience it is. And I'm so honored to work with someone with President and Mrs. Bush, who have now dedicated the rest of their lives to taking care of our veterans and military families.
Absolutely. Sorry, continue on.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, that's again how I ended up at the George W. Bush Institute. Is I still scratch my head a little bit and wonder how I got here myself, but it shows the power of building relationships and networks. And so to be part of the team has just been an amazing experience, and being able to work with veterans.
And so for just a little bit of my understanding as well for the audience, you said that you've been out for a year. How long was it, or how long have you been at the Bush Institute? Was it a pretty immediate transition after your military service?
It was actually. They offered me the job about a month before I started actually right about the time I started my terminal leave. Yeah. And so I got here to Dallas and was here for not quite a month before I started my first job awesome. Here at the Bush Institute. Yeah.
So you're coming up not only, on the 1 year of being out of the service, but you're also coming up on your 1 year anniversary there of being at the Bush Institute as well, huh?
Yes, next week will be my 1 year on the 21st, actually.
Congratulations. Well, you guys are doing so much great work, and you have written a really great article about veterans and how veterans can help fill Americans' skills gap. Can you kind of walk us through the article? Tell us why you wrote it.
Yes, well, first, thank you for reading it. It always makes you feel good when people recognize the work that you've done. The reason that we did, that I wrote the Veterans in STEM article was really based upon the actions that are being taken as the next step to the STEM Career Act that was signed into law in February of this year. What a lot of people don't recognize veterans as someone that they would think of when they think of the STEM industries. When the fact is that we have active duty across the services who work exactly in the departments of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. I think some of my, when I think about my engineers specifically from my time in the Marine Corps, I was always in awe of the work that they did. You could give them any sort of complex problem, and they could disappear for a few hours and come back and offer you a couple different solutions that they thought would work. And then we might war game those solutions, and essentially they would go and execute, and it was always successful. These are analytically technology-minded individuals across our services that are doing amazing things every day. And so the idea of building like a skill bridge program, training programs that would provide that even smoother transition for them from active duty into the STEM fields is something that we really need to look closer at.
And so before we go deeper into the Bush Institute and the services that y'all provide, I'm interested in your personal story. When you were still in the service, were you already thinking about how you can provide solutions for veterans on the outside? Was this something that for you has come naturally in a professional sense?
So it's interesting you asked that, because I will tell you this was the job that found me. This was not, and I think it was, everything happens for a reason, and obviously it's something I was meant to do. But at the time, as I was getting out, no, I was not necessarily looking for a job, working with veterans. But when I came upon this job, it changed my perspective, and I saw it as something that obviously is honorable work for an amazing person and an amazing place. But it's really become a calling now, and it's something I'm very passionate about, and it feels good because it is such an easy transition, if you will, even as a service member to continue working for the cause of veterans.
So it has felt somewhat of a natural fit then. I'm sorry to step on you, but I think it's interesting when I talk with veterans about the difference in the perspective that you have when you're in the service about who you are going to be on the other side of your military service, right? And I think that's probably true for you, and that's been true for myself, as well as for veterans who are still in the armed forces. Can you maybe speak to that about how your time outside of the military can look different than how you perceive it when you're going to be in, and maybe how you either dealt with, accepted, or kind of changed your perspective on what your life was going to be like after the military?
Absolutely. Again, a great question, because I think most military members, when they're getting out, unless they have just really been resolute and deliberate in a plan, most don't know what they want to do, because the military has been their life. And even though they may have had, some college or high school education 10 years prior, whatever that is, they haven't worked in that field if they went straight in necessarily, in a traditional sense, if they went straight into the military. And so a lot of times the transition back to, let's say, what you studied in college is not as easy as you would think it is, because you get out and realize that you have a 15-year gap of time that other professionals in that industry have. So it really is something that you have to be open about, but also kind of look at what skills have I gained while I was in the military, and how can I best apply those, and then talk to people who've gotten out and find out what they went through, because you don't know what you don't know until you get out and experience it. And like I said, I was a sports management major, and while I was in the Marine Corps, I took my time to get a master's degree in athletic administration, over the years I was in, and I thought for sure that's what I was going to do. I was going to go back and work.
Did you want to work for a sports team? Was that kind of your passion prior to the military and working at the Bush Institute?
Well, prior to the military, I was a swim coach for 10 years. And I knew that I wanted to go back into the athletic industry, possibly in the college area or something like that. And so I did the studies, I did the education piece, but the networking piece, right, and the experience gap was much more challenging when you realize that you're probably going to have to get out. And if you want to go back into that industry, you're going to start at the bottom. You're going to take a few steps back in any new industry for the most part that you choose. There's the rare occasion that you find a fit that is, maybe a little bit closer to what you've been doing. But that's not a norm.
One theme too that I've heard from whether it's John Bursler at the CEO of Combined Arms, we've talked with the people at Hiring Our Heroes, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and other people who are kind of watching the veterans landscape on unemployment, is they describe it. And I talked actually with Craig Cummings, who's an Army veteran here and has been a guest on the Next Gen Warrior shows as well. And he has kind of this theory that I think if you're on active duty, you need to listen to. And I think this is what you were just talking to. And it's a theme that I think I've just realized, that when you get out of the service, you're at kind of like a very high point. And a lot of times starting your professional career, you almost have to come a few steps back down on the ladder. But if you do that and you're comfortable and you say, hey, I know this is really difficult, in the long run, you will probably excel past your peers, even though you may start essentially behind them for your age or for your experience. Can you either confirm or deny or share your thoughts on that kind of theme?
I agree with that theory, and from what I'm seeing and the data that I've seen in the time, I've been at the Bush Institute, that is proving to be true. That veterans are known to come into the workplace and excel into leadership positions quicker than their civilian peers. Now, I think that is, a direct correlation to the fact that we are leaders at every level within the military, and that's what we're taught to be. And so if that's an aspiration of that person to do, then I think it's a given that will happen. I think that there was a time that, and I was told this at one time, that, you've achieved this level in the military, so you can expect to walk into a job at that level. And the reality is it's not true. I agree. But that's where these skills gap programs are so important, because they can lessen that impact as well. So if you have a training program that maybe does correlate with what you did in the service and allows you to do the cross training that takes what you've done and makes it valid to what the civilian world sees, you're probably going to get hired on at a company doing that at a higher level than if you just went in with just your military experience coming out. And that's only because, again, they haven't seen you in action. They don't maybe totally understand how to translate your skills into theirs. And the Skill Bridge programs are really taking off, and I think are the way of the future in transition, and especially important right now when unemployment is so high.
And that's something that the Bush Institute has really excelled at and spent a lot of time trying to bridge those skill gaps. Can you tell our audience a little bit about specifically what the Military Service Initiative at the Bush Institute is comprised of, who it's serving, and why it is serving that cadre of people?
Absolutely. So the George W. Bush Institute has both global and domestic platforms, and the Military Service Initiative is one of the domestic platforms where we work on veterans initiatives over 4 platforms. And so our platforms are health and wellness, which focuses on the connection of peer-to-peer networks to best in class healthcare to better serve our veteran community. And then we have Team 43, which is our Warriors in Sport. They participate in the Warrior 100 and the Warrior Open with President Bush. But it's so much more than just them being good at sports, which obviously they are, but it's really a program that brings them together to build a peer network and to provide healing together through sports. And it's been a life-changing experience for so many of them. And so we really look forward to seeing them as leaders in whatever capacity they're in. And then we have our Veteran Leadership Program, which I'm excited to talk about as well. We just finished up our 2 years in 2019, and we now have 75 alumni scholars. And it's really great to watch. Now we're kind of building an alumni program and watching them come together to collaborate and build a network across the nation that serves veterans in all capacities. From employment to education to health and wellness, and it provides a warm handoff, right? Yeah. So that any veteran who needs something, and they go to one organization and they say, "Hey, I can help you here and here, and now I'm going to give you over to this person who can help you with that other situation." And then we have the Veteran Economic Opportunity, which is my portfolio. And that is where we look at specifically employment and higher education for veterans, to include entrepreneurship paths as well. The big issue, I would say right now, that we're really focused on in all of our initiatives is definitely what's happening with COVID-19 and the impact that it's having on the veteran community.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you're seeing, or maybe what you're anticipating in the future for veterans, either employment or unemployment?
Absolutely. So interestingly, the stats just came out from unemployment, and we went from, before COVID hit, from having the lowest unemployment for post 9/11 veterans, which we were at 4.1%. We are now at 13% unemployment for the month of April 2020. And it's only going to continue to get worse, unfortunately, going into May. Veterans continue to get out of the service. And unfortunately, right now, some of them go straight to the unemployment line. And those are some issues that we need to, that we are looking to address and trying to analyze and project how to best help fix this problem, right?
It seems almost like an insurmountable, in a frustrating problem, because you see how well veterans were doing, and I think veterans had really, really excelled after the military. That's something that we talk a lot about here, and had seen a lot of the fruit of the unemployment come down. So it is disheartening to see it. But do you have a message, either just a word of encouragement or advice for somebody who may be getting out of the service in the next 6 months?
Yeah, absolutely. And to speak to what you said, where it seems insurmountable, we've been here before, and this is not, a conventional reason that we're at 13%. This is something very exceptional. The fact is that the businesses and the programs that were in place before COVID, the majority of them are still there. So right now there's a pivot in the way that we're thinking through the task forces that have been stood up. We are looking at how do we project where the landscape is going to shift, and how do we make sure that we're providing skills gap and programs and things, training programs, to ensure that we're still offering pathways, and the right pathways for meaningful employment for them in what the new future, the new landscape looks like post-COVID. So that's the good news.
Okay, go ahead then. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So that's the good news, is that the programs are still out there, and we have to message that veterans are still just as much a priority. They're just as much the talent that you need as they were before. The challenge now is the fact that they're up against the rest of the population that's also unemployed. And that's where, again, going back to being deliberate about your plan, If you are going to get out during this time frame and probably 6 months from now, the networking piece, the building relationships, the being deliberate in your planning, making sure that you're using the resources that are available to you, because there's so many out there. You mentioned a couple a few minutes ago that are fantastic programs where they can have their resumes clarified and detailed out for specific jobs. There are mentorship programs out there. There are so many people who want to help them. And that's the best advice I can give at this point, is to use those resources, look at the skill bridge programs, look at the training programs that are out there, build the relationships and network.
Is there an industry that has been either the unemployment has gone up, has been concentrated more in, or is there maybe a recovery that's going to be coming that a veteran can say, hey, I'm out of this now, but this industry might recover faster than some of the other ones? Is there kind of light at the end of the tunnel, you think, though?
I'm hopeful there's light at the end of the tunnel for sure. And there's not a whole lot of data yet out there to tell us exactly what's going to happen. But from, folks in the space that are much more knowledgeable than I am, the projection is that we will hopefully see some increase in our health and healthcare industry, right? Probably in manufacturing, in the STEM industries, as we talked about earlier. So I would say, start looking at those and see what's happening, to see where there might be a best fit in those areas. So that's the hopeful part, is people are still hiring. And right now it might be tougher again to get to the top of that stack, but jobs are opening up again, people are hiring, and it's again, do the research and try to forecast what industries are going to increase. And, if that seems like something that you could work towards, then start doing that.
Yeah. One of the experiences that I had when I got out, which was similar to yours, you talked about, spending years, as a swim coach and then getting your master's in a different industry that you're working in right now. And I'll let you provide a little color to this comment. But after I got out of the military, I went to community college at Austin Community College. And I even worked the front desk. I made smoothies at Gold's Gym, which I never really anticipated doing that. And to be honest with you, didn't like a whole lot. I worked as a salesman there, and I wasn't very good at that, I'll be honest with you. But I kept pushing forward, and I just kept trying to find ways that I could be successful, even if they were just small victories in kind of an unknown landscape. And I would kind of think that veterans who are leaving the service now may be experiencing something similar, which is sometimes it's not that the grass is greener or it's more brown. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the grass is just different.
Yeah. I think what veterans have going for them, right, is their resiliency. I mean, we've heard this forever. And so if one pathway doesn't work out that you think is going to, how do you shift? And most of us are resilient in the fact that we can kind of look out there and say, okay, maybe this pathway that I thought I planned for, isn't going to be the best fit right away. So what can I do in the meantime? And where do I see my skills still being of use, still being meaningful, still being, something that I can do? But you also, maybe that means that you've got that side gig, right? Something that you might be passionate about on the side that you can still work towards to keep that little fire burning, until that opportunity comes up. And we see a lot of veterans doing that, especially in the entrepreneur space.
Yeah, and I think too, now that I kind of think back on my time at Gold's and the ZigZag path that takes you to where you are in the future, is that actually those experiences can round out an individual, regardless if you're a veteran or not. There, hopefully people listening to the show who were not in the military, but still have kind of zigzag paths to prosperity, if you want to call it. And just because you're not on a single trajectory in one industry with one sector within the economy, doesn't mean that those experiences on different tracks, you can still move in the same direction, even if you're not in the industry that you want to be in, because maybe you're learning sales, or maybe you're learning engineering, or maybe you thought you'd be in oil and gas and, now you're doing marketing. To me, that's putting tools in the toolkit after the military.
Yeah, no, so like you, I had a similar experience. I mean, I was a swim coach, a personal trainer, a lifeguard, all the things through college. And then I got out of college. I didn't join the Marine Corps right away. I was out of college for about 6 years. So I worked in the athletic industry for the most part. And, again, a very different experience. And then I became a logistics officer, which wasn't necessarily a natural transition from, the sports management and athletic stuff I was doing. But what I loved about logistics is that it gave me the opportunity to, every single time I did a new job, it was a whole new space of logistics, different level, different people dealing with different problems. And so that made me well-rounded, right? And then here I am still studying athletics in the background, thinking that's what I'm going to do. And then come out and end up working, in the veteran space, which is fantastic. But all of those things, like you said, I believe make you a more well-rounded person. You've gone out there, you've seen, what's going on in several different industries and perspectives. And but that's also what the military teaches us, is that it doesn't matter what, it doesn't matter if you were an operations person, if you were an infantry guy or gal, or, if you were a communications person, you don't have to go work in that industry if that's not what your passion is. But continue learning. There's always resources out there. There's always classes you can take online. Do what you have to do and have that side gig going.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's a good place to put it on hold for now. But I did want to say, before we started this interview, you mentioned that there was a dog in the household that might be snoring and interrupting the conversation. But it sounds like he was quiet the whole time. I don't think I heard him once.
I thought you might have heard him just about 30 seconds ago, but.
Oh, did I? Okay. Well, we have a couple mascots for the show, and that's one of them. And we have, Annie downstairs outside the studio that does some barking sometimes too. So it's good to have some dogs in the audience and some fans of the show. Before we wrap up, though, is there anything that you would like to provide, any words of advice, or maybe a topic that we didn't get to touch on that you would like to leave our audience with?
Yes, thank you, Dan. Absolutely. I definitely want to talk to the veterans and active duty military folks that are out there that are either possibly unemployed right now or in transition looking for employment. These are unusual times. And so I would encourage you to, number one, take a deep breath. Be patient with yourself and know that this is going to be challenging and that you're not the only one going through it. It's okay to get letters declining your applications. You're going to have them, but continue to apply. Stay positive. The right job is out there. Keep applying your skills. Keep bettering yourself. But most importantly, and use the resources that are out there as well. Yeah. And most importantly, check on one another during this time. Check on your peers and other veterans that see how they're doing. Everybody's going through and having a different experience in these times. And it's really important that we just check on each other's mental health and well-being. Are we staying encouraged? And ensure that we can be there for each other in any capacity possible. And then I'd love to say, as the George W. Bush Institute, we are also producing lots of great resources and work in regards to COVID-19. And anybody that would like to check that out, please do so at bushcenter.org/our ideas. And hopefully we'll see you there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amy. Thanks for providing not only a word of encouragement, but also the resources for veterans and the veterans community after they leave the military. Obviously, it's very much needed now. And thank you for your continued service and leadership after the military. That's what we love to talk about here, is the professional and personal success stories, overcoming trials, overcoming tribulations, and how veterans can approach that. On behalf of Chairman George P. Bush, the Texas Veterans Land Board, I am your host, Dan Hamilton. Continue to fight, Continue to hang in there. Let's continue to lead and serve in our communities across our great nation. Until next time, we'll see you soon.
Follow us on Instagram at Voices of Vets, on Twitter at Voice of Veterans, and on Facebook at facebook.com/Voices of Veterans. To hear more, please visit voicesofveterans.org. Join us in sharing the success stories of Texas veterans. Thank you for joining us for the Next Gen Warrior podcast.